Well, here we are. It is what's day today? Today is Wednesday, the 11th of September. But we're going to talk today about a sale that's coming up at Bonhams in on the 16th. This is the sale: fine Chinese works of art, Chinese ceramics and works of art in New York City. It's a great looking sale. It's their segment for Asia Week. And they've got some really nice things. It's not a huge sale. It's about 140, 50 lots. It's not a giant sale. But the things that in here are pretty choice, including this cover lock, which comes from the Utterberg family. And David Utterberg was an avid collector for a long time. And he built a heck of a collection of Chinese furniture for himself. A lot of it came from the Classical Chinese Museum in California that was shut down. Some of it came from Grace Wu Bruce. He was on the board of the San Francisco Asian Art Museum, and he was a very bright guy. He lived in Seattle. He passed away in 2020, I think, and he was well known in the Asian art community as a collector and big fan and supporter. And he was a very successful businessman in the medical industry. And he and his wife, here they are. They're in the picture. Nada was her name, I believe. Right? Nada. And they were collectors, and they loved what they did. There's a very nice write-up in there about their life and so forth. And then they get into the furniture collection as it was in their home. Very, very exceptional number of pieces. And we're going to go through them because they've got good provenance and very rare, really rare pieces. And we're going to start with this, the Huanhua Li round corner tapered cabinet. This is a really fantastic example. He bought it from Eskenazi back in the early 1990s, from Giuseppe Eskenazi in London, who's of course one of the best dealers in the world. Today's certainly one of the top five anyway, maybe one of the top two or three. And is this. And notice one of the things that's great about this is the selection of wood on these really very refined Ming cabinets. The wood selection always plays a very significant role in the value. And in this case, you'll notice you see these two areas here, the grain on the left and on the right. And what this tells us is that these were cut from the same tree, and they just folded them open. So they took it like this, they sawed it, opened it, and they made a door out of each side. And they did it very beautifully. You notice how well they align all the way down. But the color of the wood, the graining of the wood, the textures of the wood, and then the secondary woods used to frame it were applied beautifully. So it gives a subtle difference between the panel wood and the outline, and it all flows together. And then, of course, the rounded corners and so forth. This is a very handsome piece of furniture, extremely handsome. There's the interior, a couple of drawers and shelves and stuff for storage. Nice height off the floor. It looks to have full height on it. And as I said, there it is. Giuseppe, 1990, Eskenazi and Company. It measures 61 inches in height. It's estimated at $150,000 to $250,000. But that's not an unreasonable price, given we've seen, Chinese furniture has been doing very, very well, especially classical Ming furniture in the last few years. And even 18th century furniture is starting to pick up. But the Ming stuff is always demand for it. It's a very limited supply. And it's spectacularly beautiful stuff. And then there's this very nice three-tiered, three-shelf bookcase. These are also very, very rare, very delicate, and not many of these survived. And for that reason, the estimates on these tend to be pretty high because of the inherent visible possibility of damaging these. They're very light. They're very strong. They're surprisingly strong, but they can get broken, obviously, because you look at the size of them and how narrow the supports are. But the construction and the detail work on this one's particularly refined and a beautiful color. And it's estimated at $200,000 to $300,000. And this one he bought from Grace Wu Bruce in Hong Kong back in 1991. So it's starting to look like he bought a lot of the furniture back in the early 90s when he really got into it. And a $200,000 to $300,000 estimate. Very rare bird, though. Very, very rare. And then over to this, another very rare piece. Now, this is the one that came from the... close that up. That came from Grace Wu Bruce and then was sold to the collection in the Museum of Classical Chinese Furniture in California in Renaissance. And if you don't know the story about the museum, it got shut down. It was this whole sort of kerfuffle over taxes or something or other, the way the money was being put into it. And it was a shame because they had an amazing collection. It was one of the finest collections in the world of Ming furniture. And they basically had to liquidate it. And they had an auction of the stuff, and everybody jumped on it at the time. It was a very exciting sale. But this is a beautiful, beautiful cabinet, slightly atypical form, wonderful hardware on it, very dramatic. And has got its full height. It's got the stand down here. You see the returns, the spade returns on the feet. They're full height. It has been cut down. Sometimes you'll see these, and they'll even cut them up above it so you don't know what's missing. You'll see that sometimes on Chinese furniture. A lot of Chinese furniture tables will have a vase form at the bottom, and then it's just flat by today. And it's because one of them got damaged. Something happened from dragging, bumping, whatever, and they cut them off. And this one, though, has full height, which is very important. It's estimated at $200,000 to $300,000. It measures just, it's not terribly tall, 46 inches in height, but it's an elegant, elegant, elegant cabinet. Really beautiful. And then over to this. This is the real, my favorite piece of furniture in the sale, just because I love the carving so much. I like carved wood, so as you all know. But the backsplat on this chair is a horseshoe back chair, a very rare form and spectacularly carved. And at the top, you have that very, very classical sort of archaistic thing of the swirling chimeras or dragons that you see on other types of Chinese furniture. It was a popular motif. And then they put side panels down at vines, and then below it they have this very, very classical scene of bronzes in a landscape, sort of in a landscape floral setting that you see that was done often in the Ming, Yuan and Ming dynasty. And then you have all this extra work down here across, on the apron to the chair and down the inside of the leg and right down here and even the bottom. It's, again, full height. And it's got this very nice little volute that they added underneath the footrest. You don't see that. Usually it's just a straight panel. This one they took the time to carve it a little bit. I think that's sweet. And then you have chimera-type devices climbing up the inside of the leg there on that panel. It's a beautiful piece of furniture, and also very notable for the color. The color of the wood here is just stupendous. It's like warm honey. Beautiful, beautiful finish. Spectacular. And $400,000 to $600,000 estimate, but not out of the world for this. This is what they bring. This is a real rarity. If you've been looking for one of the holy of holies in Chinese Ming furniture, this is one of them. And then over to this, the Sancai glazed Bactrian Camel. I love this camel. It is 31 inches tall, so it's very, very large. But the coloring and the modeling of the camel is so dramatic and so strong. It's beautiful. I don't often talk about Tang camels because there's so many that aren't that interesting. But this one has a wonderful surface to it. It's got a spectacular surface. I think this one came from Alan Hartman, as a matter of fact. And but the way the glaze was running down here, it's like a river of colors flowing down over the saddle and the double humps. And these Bactrian camels, these double hump camels, were brought in during the Tang court. They became very, very popular. They referred to them as the famous camels of the desert because they could go incredibly long distances without much food or water. They were these amazing, indestructible animals, and they could be herded and they could be trained to carry things as pack animals, obviously. And there are even black and white films that were shot in the late 19th and early 20th century showing caravans of camels coming and going from Beijing Peking at the time, they're absolutely, they were put to use. They were used right up through the 20th century, and there's this great example. This is a really good example. And notice the slight smile on the platform at the bottom. You see that often on the old ones. The new ones, they tend to get them flatter, but the originals, the newer ones have the flat base, and the older ones tend to have a little lift in the middle here, very often. Not always, but often. There's the other side of it. There's his mouth. What an expression. But the richness of the glaze is what I guess knocked me out in the size. It measures 31 inches in height and 20 inches long. It's a big one. It's a very, very big camel. 30 to 50,000. And then hopping along over to this. This is great. This is a very rare copper red glazed Yongchen market period vase. It almost looks, it looks very much like peach bloom. The color in many, many ways. It's got the little blossoming areas on it. But the cup form mouth, and then the string turnings here on the neck, and then this very nicely potted body that goes out almost like a stupa. and then comes back in and then flares out again to a slightly conical base down here, slightly rounded. It's beautifully, beautifully potted piece. There's the mark on the bottom, looks absolutely great. Fine. The foot rim obviously is perfect, and it's estimated at $50,000 to $70,000, and it's 11 inches tall. It's a pretty good sized vase. 11 inches, 11 and 1/16 inches. I don't know why they bothered with the 16th of an inch, but they did. But it's a heck of a nice looking piece of porcelain. Those of you that love, there's some good monochromes in here. It's mostly monochromes we're going to look at in the porcelain. I think the best looking examples are the monochromes that they have. And then there's this very rare, this is a really rare bird, Chanbai glazed, chrysanthemum form bowl, Yongchen market period. And these Chanbai glazes, or sometimes they refer to them, I think they used to call them sweet white, back in the Yuan early Ming dynasty. But it's the color, and it's not Qingbai, but it's not far from it. And they didn't make a lot of these lotus bowls. These are very rare. The Emperor Qianlong, according to the write-up in this, they mentioned that he had placed an order to have sets of these made. And today, only 12 of them remain existent in the Palace Museum. And there may be a few others floating around in collections here and there. But a very, very, very rare type of bowl. And beautifully done. There's the bottom with the Yongchen mark. Notice absolutely perfectly the foot is finished. It's smooth as glass. If you ran your hand over that, it would almost feel like it was glazed. And there's a nice profile shot of it, but very evenly potted, very evenly glazed, great color. And again, Chanbai glaze. There was that famous Mei Ping vase that had the Chanbai glaze, sweet white glaze, that sold for a fortune back around 10 or 12, 15 years ago, I remember. It was amazing. And then over to this. Many of you have seen these before, but because they made quite a few of them in the Qianlong period, but they're extremely beautiful. And the reason they made so many of them because the emperor loved the shape and the color. It has this sort of celadony green, almost like a jade green glaze to it, which was so appealing to the emperor. And he said, make these. But the potting is superb. The potting on these are nearly always superb and perfect. Just as smooth and just as proportional and as wonderful as they should be. This is really it. And when you flip it over, the bottom of it has the regular sort of Qianlong mark, and they have that trimming tool that looked like a comb to clean up the bottom, so it was a nice even surface and had a little bit of a pattern to it. I think it made it more appealing than just having it flat. I think I kind of like it when they would put these little ridges in there. The only problem is that on copies today, they're starting to use a similar tool to put those ridges back on the fake, so you want to be very, very careful. But this is a beautiful, beautiful example, estimated at $40,000 to $60,000. And the reason the estimate isn't hundreds of thousands is because they did make quite a few of these, but they are universally loved. They're absolutely beautiful. And then over to this. This is another unusual bowl. This is an imperial white glazed lotus pedestal bowl, Qianlong market period, Lianjiwan, as they're referred to. And here it is. And again, you have one of these very soft blue glazes, different than the other one, with the lotus petals around the bottom, and then this Greek key border at the top. Beautifully, beautifully potted bolo, and pretty rare. This is a rare bird also. I think the estimate on this seems low. I don't know. I have a feeling this is low for this. And it has a nice conical, convex shaped bottom. It bubbles out just slightly, and then the foot splays away, and the glaze comes very close to the foot. Nice job with it. It's beautifully potted, beautifully glazed. And this one isn't estimated like the other one. It's only estimated at 7,000 to 10,000, which seems low to me. It just seems low to me for what this is. For a market period Qianlong example, he was such a fan of these monochromes. We'll see how it does. We'll come back and visit it. And then there's this Yi type vase with Ruyi handles on it. But you may remember the other day we talked about a piece that's coming up at Sotheby's. It's a more expensive one. It's a bit more refined, but this is an awfully nice one, and it's not going to bring $600,000 or $800,000. But it's beautifully potted. I like the double crackle, the sort of rust crackle, the reddish crackle, and then the black crackle, which is a technique they pioneered in the 12th century and sort of brought it ahead. And here it is. And this is a wonderful looking piece. And the potting on this is quite refined. The handles are very, very nice. And you notice they built out the lip slightly at the top where it just kicks out a little. On the copies, they tend to be very straight. And just a fine, fine line of brown dressing around the top. Estimated at $15,000 to $25,000. And it measures a little over 9.5 inches in height. It's not a great big one, but boy, it's a pretty one. And then over to this. This is a white glazed sleeve vase, 17th or 18th century. These turn up fairly often. They're not especially rare in general for the form, but this is a particularly good one. And otherwise, I wouldn't have mentioned it. But this one's, there are great examples of well-known forms and just good examples. We've seen it many, many times. This is a very good example of this form because it's so refined. It's very sleek. The proportions are excellent. It's the top of it up here at the top, the way it tapers in and thins down to this very gentle mouth around the top. And then when you turn it sideways, let's get over here. The mask is also beautifully done. The detail, the facial expression, I happen to like it a lot. I think he looks like he's almost grinning, and but flanked on each side by the Greek key border. And again, that very, very refined mouth, and the crackle on it is quite attractive. I think the crackle really, really finishes it off. And it's just $3,000 to $4,000. And this is a 17-inch pot. This isn't a little thing. 17 inches tall. And there it is on its wood stand. It's a great-looking thing. Again, one of these very cool Art Deco-looking things. But I like these. I had these over the years. Some of them are much better than others. And this is one of the nicer ones I've seen. And I wouldn't be surprised if it went over the estimate a bit. Very, very pretty. And then the iron rest glazed vase, 18th century. It's not marking period or anything. It's just pretty. It's just such a pretty piece of porcelain. It's beautifully potted. And it has sort of a matte finish. The glaze on it's a little bit of a matte finish. So that when you look at it against the background, you can really see how superbly potted it was. It's about the quality of the potting. How well was this? How skilled was the potter? And you always want to look at that. And it doesn't have to be an imperial piece to have beautiful potting. You can find some sumptuously gorgeous pieces that are not market period, that are relative bargains despite their quality, because they're not marked. That's the only difference. And I know it makes a difference to some, but if you like it just for the beauty of it, this is a beautiful piece of porcelain. It's a beautiful example. The proportions are great. The height of the foot, the roundness of the body, the scale up to here, and so forth. It'd be fun to take the Fibonacci algorithm and apply it to Chinese porcelain and see how they come out. I bet the symmetry is right there. I bet it is. And there's another look at the glaze again. It's got a slight shine to it, but not glossy. Just a sort of a matte sheen. Very attractive. I love it. $5,000 to $7,000 piece. Wonderful. And then over to this. This is a dated Kangxi piece. It's a stem bowl or a stem cup. They call them bowls, I guess. But it's dated on the other side to 1710. And it's got some very nice calligraphy, a little panel here on here. But notice the quality of the blue. The blue is beautifully done. It's got the dental border at the top, as they call it. And there it is. And this thing is pretty good size, 7 inches tall. It's not a 2 or 3 inch stem bowl. It's 7 inches in height. It looks to be in very, very good condition, and I don't understand the estimate. It seems low to me, $3,000 to $5,000, because as we talked about before with Chinese porcelain, there's the value of the porcelain is often determined by the quality of the different arts that are applied to it. So you have the potter's skill, clearly a good potter, okay, nice proportions, good scale, nice finish, all that stuff. And then the decoration, the dragons, and the selection of the cobalt, how well and how evenly is it applied, all of that work, and then calligraphy. Because calligraphy is done by somebody else. So you've got 3 arts, potting, decoration, and calligraphy in one piece. And to a lot of collectors, that's the trifecta. And that's why you see these palace bowls, Falankai or Fenkai bowls, and one will just have flowers on it. It brings hundreds of thousands of dollars because it's imperial. But then you find one that has calligraphy and a poem on it, and it triples that. It goes way over because they value the calligraphy so much as an art form. And this one is just estimated at $3,000 to $5,000. I think it's terrific. If you're a Kangxi collector, you want to look into that. And then over to this is very nice, transitional to Chunzhen period brush pot, very typical type with a sage in the area being a tray being brought to him, and with the spotted deer of longevity. And but notice, it's very sparsely decorated. That's typical of these. They don't always fill in every little crevice. They leave a lot of negative space, a little space for the imagination. Then you have the sort of plantain trees on the back and so forth. And then this side, I love this side actually a lot. It's the tops of temples coming up, poking up through the clouds, with this figure on a terrace on a mountain landscape, looking out across as the clouds descend down over them or as they push up through it. Very attractive, and this will do pretty well. It's estimated 7 to 10,000, and it's interesting because back in the 1980s and stuff, we see brush pots like this turn up in auctions around the countryside in New England, and auctioneers always put them up as being late 19th century export brush pots, and they would go for anywhere from $50 to $100 max. And here they are today. I wish I bought more of them. $7,000 to $10,000. And then over to this. This is very, very pretty. I mentioned this a few weeks ago when I first touched on this auction without going into much detail. It was this very pretty Famille Rose, late Yongchen to early Qianlong period immortals dish. It's 11 or 13 inches in diameter, so it's technically a charger. It's a big piece. But what I loved about it so much was the colors are remarkably brilliant and vibrant. And I hope this is really, I would, ask if you're interested in this, call up and verify that these are the colors. Have them shoot it for you outside in the sun or something to make sure. But the yellows and the pinks are so strong on this, and you have this very, very lovely, slightly translucent green swirling around with black outlines. And here you have this guy. Look at this guy up top, this immortal. He's riding his Fu lion. You got to love that. And she's in a spoon-formed boat, and so forth. He's hugging his peach. It's just riding on horses and so forth. They're sort of having a party for themselves around this pond with the pair of ducks. Very attractive. It's estimated at $4,000 to $6,000, which isn't outrageous at all. It's very good looking. And anything notes? Similar example sold in 2014 at Christie's. If you want to go check it out and do this comparison, but this is a very prime example. You can have plates. It's a funny thing, that pattern. You'll see that pattern on other pieces, but there is often wide variation in the quality of the work. You can have two that they ostensibly look identical, but when you look at them carefully, you'll notice that there's a considerable difference. Sometimes one is by far superior to the other, so something to look into. And then on to this. Now, these are interesting. These are really, really interesting story. These are obviously stupiforms. And there's an article in the story here explaining these. And I'd heard a little bit about this debate, but I didn't follow it particularly. But there was a debate about these because for a long time, these are made in the in the Tang Dynasty. And they thought they were reliquaries, right? Let's see, how tall are they? They're not terribly big, just a little under 9 inches. They're not tiny. They thought they were reliquaries. And then they have since learned through research and studying and doing digging and old records and so forth that these are actually incense storage containers. And they're very architectural. Obviously, they're very beautiful. The colors are great. And again, that Art Deco flavor. If you saw these in a home and you didn't know they were Chinese, and somebody said, "Oh, they were made by a French Art Deco artist in the 1920s or something," you'd say, "Yeah, that makes sense. That's what they look like." No, they're Chinese. From the 6th or 7th century. Absolutely great looking things. These are stunning. These are just stunning, and the color is great on them. It's undisturbed patina. $20,000 to $30,000. And then hopping along over to this, the large gilt bronze figure of a female immortal. This is a wonderful example. It's late Ming, but it's crisply cast. It's 21 inches tall. This is a big piece of bronze, 21 inches. But notice how well cast it is. Especially up on the head, the hair and you have the plumes of the peacocks coming off the head. But the crispness of the casting is all still there, which is very, very attractive. The beads all look good. I don't see a lot of rubbing on the corners. The robes are beautifully done all the way down to the bottom. Even the shoes, how they're sticking out, the tips of the toes of the shoes, those very stylish shoes, just wonderfully done. And estimated at $30,000 to $50,000, but 20 inches tall, right? 20 inches and a half tall. That's a big example. It was bought in Hong Kong in 1968. A long time. And a really, really wonderful thing. And then over to this, another bronze. This may remind some of you of the one that's coming up a little bit over at Doyle's, right? And you have another one of these beautiful Joan de marked relief work gilded incense burners. It's about 7 inches in diameter. And these were, for a long time, there was a lot of dispute about these. People up in the 1920s and 30s always thought these were marking period because of the gold seal, the plaque, and all that. And there's always been this sort of entertaining debate about whether they're period or not. And I think that they've come down on that they're not period. They were done during the later Ming, but they're still very beautiful. And this is an exceptional example. Again, nicely done, beautifully cast, nice relief work. The gilding is in good condition all the way around. Nothing to complain about. Estimate 7 to 10,000. And then over to this one, the lacquer box. I love this lacquer box. I'm going to show you why in a second. Get in here. Hold on. There we go. Love the scene at the bottom. The first thing that struck me was that it's very, very thickly lacquered. This is a very, very thickly lacquered box. You see the depth of the shadows on here, which means layer upon layer upon layer upon layer, dozens of layers probably of lacquer before they begun carving it. And that means you had to wait a long time between layers so that it would cure enough that you could carve it without it turning into mud. And here you have this fellow sitting at his table, his scholar's table. He's got a Ming table here, and he's got scholar's objects all over it, and a coat rack or a rack for his robe hanging over it. And then he's sitting in front of his big outdoor sort of, a big dramatic floor screen beneath a scholar's rock, and then climbing trees up into the pine trees. And he's sitting beneath a canopy of pine trees with a cloud coming in the corner. And there's the moon, the little dot in the sky. Just a wonderful thing. And I love the shape of it. It's an ingot form box. There we go. Pull this in. But notice again, here you can really see the depth of the carving. I mean, that looks like it's about a 1/4 inch thick. It's amazing. And late Ming, 17th century, $10,000 to $15,000, measures 8.5 inches long. But if you like lacquer, this is a good one. And it looks to be in excellent condition, too. That's the other thing. I was going over the pictures pretty carefully and looking for, chipping and damage. There's always, waiting for the other shoe to drop. But I couldn't find anything wrong with this. This is just a really nice, well-maintained example that never got abused. And then hopping along over here, the lapis lazuli 16 Lohan table screens. These are splendid. These are really, really splendid. We've seen these in jade. They often carve jade table screens and plaques and so forth. They're not common, but they did do them. But in lapis is quite unusual. And the gilding on these is very good. And apparently there's a pair in the Palace Museum. They think these were done in the late Qianlong to early Caijing period. They're not sure exactly when because there's no hard line between one got stopped and the other started having things made. And but the stands on the bottom have a lot of Ming influence in the way that they're done. There's a lot of Ming influence there. And there's the back of it. And on the back side of it, I don't know if the pictures wouldn't load for me before. There it is. It did load. What do you know? Okay. They have rows and rows of calligraphy and script. All right. But the color of the stone, I think, is really wonderful. I love the color of the stone on this. It is the variations of the blues. It goes from very, very light, almost green, almost aqua green, all the way to dark blue. Now, they look like they may have had a repair in here. You want to double check on that and find out what that is. This one looks absolutely perfect, but a pair of these are very hard to find. They're absolutely beautiful, and they, like I said, I think, what are they again? 11 inches in height overall, including the stands. Just a hair under 12 inches tall, including the stands. Beautiful examples, though. Love lapis. And then last thing is this, 2 pale celadon jade hair ornaments, Yuan Dynasty. And what I really like about it is the one on the left, the big one. There it is. He's got a dragon coming up out of the vines. Beautifully carved. And notice the quality of the jade is also quite excellent here, obviously. But it's all very refined, deeply carved right into the middle. How did they do that? How long this took to carve. It's hard enough to carve just jade, on the surface. But to go through and do a reticulated thing, the way they, they later did ivory, puzzle balls, that kind of thing. But to pull that off in jade is quite remarkable. And then there's another one over here, another hair ornament of a phoenix. Very attractive pair. And I don't think the estimate's crazy. 5,000 to 7,000. Get a condition report of it. That looks like a great carving with the dragon on top. You see other creatures up there sometimes, but very often it's just like a bramble pile with a few flowers on it. This one has a dragon, which is very terrific. So that's just some of the highlights as I saw them in the sale. There's a lot of nice stuff in here. It's a very interesting little auction. They've got some real gems. And, if you see anything in there you like, get a hold of them. You got a few days to get your information to them, what you need. But I would definitely encourage some participation here, because I think there's some very reasonable pieces. And you may be able to get them to hit a little bit about, what's got a big reserve, what doesn't have a big reserve. Auction houses will sometimes tell you that. They'll tell you, do you have a shot or not? And don't be afraid to ask. All right. But get a hold of Bonhams and ask them. All right, have a good week. Thank you for subscribing, and come back. We'll be back on Friday with another video, the regular one. If I can get another one in tomorrow on one of the other sales, I'll do it. We've been kind of running around this week, and join us over on Patreon if you enjoy our work and you want to help us support the work we do here. It's always helpful. It really is. I'm not just saying that. It really does make a big difference on what we can do, because we do have a budget for all this stuff. And I love putting things in, and as you know, and been doing it for, I think we got 700 videos up now, so we've been doing it for a while. All right, but thank you so much for watching, and have a good week. All right, bye-bye.